Happy trade deadline day. I'm Chris Manning. That is Evan Dammarell giving you a Locked on Cavs live here on YouTube. Our first one in quite a long time to talk about the deadline, take your questions on the deadline, everything going on here with the Cavs. Deadline, want to first tell you that today's live stream is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Evan, I think as we predicted, the Cleveland Cavaliers stood pat. Now that we have actually seen them go and stay pat, not make a trade, not trade for Royce O'Neal, not trade for a guard, nothing. Now that they've actually done it, what do you make of it?
Once Royce O'Neal went to the Phoenix Suns, I more or less just resigned myself to the fact that the Cavs weren't making like a serious deadline move. Other than that, like it's tricky. Like Koby Altman acknowledged the fact that the Cavs are right up against the luxury tax threshold. They are limited asset wise after getting Donovan Mitchell and the moves they made over the summer to get like Max Strus and George Niang, which is more reasonable for them in free agency. This was more so the fact that like the Cavs were very comfortable with where they're at. I think it's understandable to feel why they're comfortable where they're at. And again, like once I saw O'Neal was going to Phoenix, I'm like that was probably their one guy maybe they would seriously entertain trying to acquire.
I think them overall standing pat again just makes sense. We hit on this in previewing the deadline, but we are in a position here where they didn't, I think, feel a need to rush and do something. They did not feel a need to go and reinvent the wheel, readjust what is working, and asset wise and cost wise, that fits in. There was a budget here that they had to shop within, whether it was financially, whether it was draft picks. There was a limit on what they could reasonably spend. I think if there's a different world where they didn't go on this run and win all these
Mm-hmm.
games in a row in 15 to 16, whatever, and have the success they did without Garland and Mobley, and then get those two guys back and find Sam Merrill, I think there could have been a world, Evan, where there was more urgency, where there would have been like, hey, should we try to flip Karis LeVert and try for Buddy Hield? Should we trade for a veteran guard, a la what we did with Rajon Rondo a couple years ago? Should we pick another move, trade for Bruce Brown or something, be more aggressive, throw all our chips in to try to maximize what
Mm-hmm.
is here with Donovan Mitchell? But because they win games, because they've had the success, I think that gave them some time to see what's actually here. And maybe there's a buyout move. We'll get to some of the names. People are speculating about some of them in our comments. There's names you could look at, but I think standing pat ultimately just kind of add up to being the most logical move.
Yeah, it became more logical, as you said, when the Cavs, when thrown into their lap, a, a crossroads more or less, where the wake of the news of the Garland and Mobley injuries could have fractured this team quite a bit. And I picked Kobe Altman's brain a little bit on this during his limited media availability before the Cavs played the Nets. That the Cavs kind of approached this after Altman and his staff spoke with the players and the coaches, just getting input from them. And the general consensus was because they were winning, because they're playing so well, and the fact that they were dealt a serious dose of adversity after a topsy turvy start of the season, that the Cavs are closer. They're a tight knit group. They're a brotherhood bound in sweat, not blood, and they are playing really good basketball. And I think that cannot be understated. Like Altman even said, like this is the best basketball Donovan Mitchell has played in his career, and I think that's completely valid. So you look at this roster, they dug deeper. They kind of unlocked Sam Merrill quite a bit. They've got more from George Niang. I think Dean Wade is looking a lot more comfortable, even if you wish he took more 3 pointers. But regardless, Altman said, like, first and foremost, they were never going to make a lateral move or make a trade for the sake of making a trade. And based on the assets they had, or maybe just like what the general interest was, or maybe what Cleveland was comfortable giving up, is mostly just lateral moves or things like that. And it would more or less disrupt the flow, the chemistry, and the general vibe coming out of that locker room because instead of splitting and fracturing apart after the wake of those injuries, they got tighter, they became closer, and I think it's just it's delicate. Like you don't want to disrupt it or mess up a good thing or try to fix something that frankly isn't broken, and instead you just look ahead to say like, okay, we have Ty Jerome on this roster still. He may not play for us again this season. We're still have two roster spots open, which we'll touch on in a bit. But yeah, standing pat made sense, especially when after that 2 game loss, they're on a 3 game losing streak. They lose to Orlando and Boston twice, but that recent loss to Boston was just so ugly. The Cavs just started climbing up the ladder of the Eastern Conference. They went from a play-in team to the second best record in the Eastern Conference, and they could be on the heels of the best record in the NBA. Like, yeah, you don't want to rock the boat too much. You just want to kind of maybe see this play out and see what happens, and then use the luxury of those 2 additional roster spots you have right now to maybe find guys, whether it's a free agent or a G League player that is technically a free agent too, to accentuate what you have and not disrupt the flow of what you're trying to build.
The exact quote Kobe had, quote, sometimes you don't want to mess up a good thing, and we'll roll with what we have. That is where this team is at. Evan will ask before we go into break and come back, talk about what other teams in the East did, how that affects the Cavs. I'm looking at you, New York Knicks. Cavs right now, before they play Brooklyn, are second in the Eastern Conference. Boston ahead of them, obviously. They are a game ahead of the Knicks, a game ahead of the Bucks, 2.5 games of Philly, and 4.5 games ahead of the Pacers. They are going to be in a tight battle the rest of the way to be 2 or 3, and I think ideally for them be on the opposite side of Boston in the playoff bracket. How do you handicap their odds of being the 2 or the 3 seed now that we're past the deadline and we see what moves other teams did and did not make?
So looking ahead, New York is obviously going to be a pain in your butt no matter what. I think the OG Anunoby injury news certainly creates a bit of a opportunity for Cleveland to create a gap between them and New York. Friend of the program, Jordan Christmas, hates every move that the Sixers made outside of the Buddy Hield trade. So maybe the Sixers are hoping Embiid's back sooner instead of later, and they rush him back or something like that. But we'll see what happens. I think the Cavs are, I don't want to say in the catbird seat or sitting pretty, but they are in a pretty prime spot to at least build a gap from New York to kind of maintain that distance between 2 and 3, and then still kind of be poking at the heels or just nipping the Celtics a little bit for the first seed. But I feel pretty comfortable in saying, like, just based on the Anunoby injury news or what Philly has done, or even Indiana as well, just because Indiana is just like such a fascinating team to me. Cleveland, they're in a good spot right now, just because of how well they're playing, and at least in Altman's eyes, getting Mobley and Garland back before the trade deadline, and then easing them back in the rotation, and once they're fully healthy, like that is your bonus right there. And then you're hoping those two can click right away, and then you just kind of keep rolling forward and forward and forward, because getting 2 all-star/star level players versus just making like a rotational move is certainly more significant compared to like what some teams did today at the deadline.
All right, after this, let's get into those other moves, and I'll give my answer to the own question that I asked. But first, got to give you a couple words from just a few sponsors here. And as I pull this up, Evan, I got to tell you one other thing about this trade deadline that I thought was interesting was that it was so spaced out. Part of the reason I didn't think the Cavs were going to do anything is because it felt like a lot of moves kind of just got solidified ahead of the fact, and you ended up in this world where like a lot of the biggest best players were traded weeks ago, and
Yeah,
today was
absolutely.
like filler deals ultimately. But first sponsor today is our friends at eBay Motors. eBay Motors, if you don't know, is a great way to buy and shop for everything related to your car online right now. eBay Motors has over 122 million parts from when ride or die, and you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. And with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. They have all the parts you need at the prices you want. It's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. That is eligible items only. And that includes roof rack, superchargers, LED headlights, and much more. So Check that out at ebaymotors.com. Exclusions apply, and an eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Got to tell you about our friends at PrizePicks as well. PrizePicks is the largest DFS, that's daily fantasy sports, operator in North America, and it is demon time on PrizePicks. You can now earn up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks. You could turn $10 into $1,000. Demons and Goblins, that's right, Demons and Goblins, are the newest and most exciting way to play at PrizePicks. Squares marked with red demons or green goblins, not the Marvel villain, get you different payouts. You can now win up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedInNBA and use code LockedInNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. That is prizepicks.com/LockedInNBA, code LockedInNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. So, Evan, I look at the East. I look at where things stand. And I do think this is just going to be the most exciting race down the stretch in the Eastern Conference. I do think... Okay, Nate. I do think the Eastern Conference race for 2 and for 3 is going to be the most exciting race down the stretch of the season. You could look at the top seed in the Western Conference because you have 4 teams really competing for that as well. But I think whoever gets 2 and 3, and 2 more than 3 just because of the home court part of it, it's going to have real value in the playoffs. If you can get on the opposite side of the bracket of the Boston Celtics, who are the best team in the East, you have a real window, a real path to getting to the conference finals. There is so much to play for Cleveland down the stretch here. And if you look at what teams, the 3 teams I think are running for that right now based on health and other things, it's Cleveland, it's Milwaukee, it's the Knicks. The Bucks didn't ultimately do anything. They obviously have changed coaches.
They got
they
Patrick
Dame,
Beverly.
They have
Thank
a big
you very
talent.
much.
Robin Lopez is gone, which is unbelievable. They broke up the Lopez brothers. A crime. The Knicks made some real moves. They want to go get Alec Burks. They get Bogdanovich. Maybe Mitchell Robinson does come back this year. They're also 9-1 in their last 10 games, just like the Cavs are. OG obviously hurt right now, but you think they'll get healthy. You'll think they'll be right there. This is going to be such a fun race, and I think the different ways, the different energies these teams are bringing into that race it's going to be awesome. Philly has kind of dropped back a little bit, but Cleveland, the Bucks, and the Knicks all are going to have a ton to play for in that fight for the 2 and 3 seed. I kind of actually wish we had another Cavs-Bucks game, but we don't. That's done for the year. But we at least do get Cavs-Knicks here in about a month's time.
Yeah, we 100% do.
Evan, you are muted right now, so I need you to figure that out. And he is gone for a second, folks. We're gonna just keep rolling here. We are live. We're rolling off here. Technical difficulties are very, very fun. He's coming back here. I will say, do you like the Knicks moves? I know that's not going to be a fun thing. Still can't hear you. That's not going to be a fun thing for anybody to have to realize that the Knicks are making good moves and doing fun things, but they made some really good moves here. Bogdanovich as a counter for the coverages they are going to see thrown at Jalen Brunson is a real thing the Cavs or any other team are going to have to contend with. He's going to space off of Brunson when 2 were thrown on the ball. That's something you're going to have to figure out how to defend and be smart about. Certainly they didn't. I don't think Burks is... Yeah, nothing, bro. They can't... Nothing. Can't hear you. There is nothing as far as... There's nothing as far as he can do that is quickly-esque. But I think there's a real world where he is at least additive in some way. I think there's a real world where at least like he can do something for them and be positive for them in some way. So the Knicks are going to be a real pain. I think as you're looking at teams, they would be the bigger threat to me. There we go. I don't know.
All
what
right,
happened,
cool.
But
I don't know either. Now it makes sense when he said the Bucks didn't do anything. And I said they got Patrick Beverly. Thank you very much. But
okay. I'm sorry, Pat. The Sixers swapping Kyle Lowry's homecoming is cool if that's what happens there. But swapping out Pat Bev for Kyle Lowry is like swapping out like C-level guard play for another C-level guard play.
Well, at least on the Bucks Sixers side of things, you're swapping former Cavs legend campaign for Patrick Beverly, which, for Doc at least, that's another vet he can play or possibly ignore, but he's never going to play the young kids. But either way, looking at the spectrum at the trade deadline, there was a lot of just like, rotation for rotation guy moves, but you were talking about the Knicks quite a bit, and I like what New York was able to do, especially because they didn't give Detroit their first round pick back and they're still under the luxury tax threshold. Like, yeah, I talked about this in the last segment. The OG Anunoby news stinks if you're New York. 3 weeks out without him after he was such a catalyst for this run you've been on is tough, but you're adding Bogdanovich, you're adding Alec Burks. Like these are role players. They aren't going to be like starters. They're not superstars or high end role players or anything like that. But like they're guys that make you better. And we look at like what New York's weaknesses were. You go get Precious Achiuwa before this, and that adds front court depth. You had mentioned Mitchell Robinson maybe coming back before the end of the season and being available for the postseason. Like that would be good for New York as well. But like Isaiah Hartenstein is playing very well, and people know I'm bullish on him. So regardless, the Knicks' other weakness other than front court depth was just like lack of bench scoring. And you get Bogdanovich, you get Burks, and you're still sitting pretty. Like you can comb the open market because like they have a clear need of point guard. Like you mentioned Kyle Lowry going to the Sixers. Like I think Lowry going to the Knicks makes a lot more sense too, especially if like he does have like a clearer path to getting some legitimate playing time. We'll obviously see what happens between now and then. Like Spencer Dinwiddie is being bought out by the Toronto Raptors, and it's been linked that he is going to the Los Angeles Lakers. But things could change between now and then too. But I'm high on what the Knicks did. I am high on the Sixers getting, or not the Sixers, excuse me, the Grizzlies getting something for Roddy and getting some picks for their troubles, just because like they are heading towards a
Well,
path where they have a top 10 pick,
that
but.
that one doesn't really. I guess like if we're looking at this, that's is there moves
It
that
doesn't affect
affected
it doesn't
Cleveland?
affect the Cavs
Yeah.
directly, but I'm just saying like, well, I guess it does affect the Cavs directly because Roddy going to Phoenix was part of Royce O'Neal going to Phoenix, and that was the guy I thought, at least realistically speaking, Cleveland could have gotten leading up to the deadline. But regardless, like New York played the game very well. I think they played Troy Weaver very well. Again, cannot believe that despite all the bluster about Bogdanovich or Burks and how the Pistons weren't interested in moving them or at least entertaining a first round pick, like New York finessed the Knicks quite a bit. But in terms of the Cleveland lens, I'm very curious to see what the market looks like in terms of free agents. Like people were talking about more senior maybe being an option. I know Doug McDermott went to the Pacers. That's another move I kind of like. Like I like what Indiana's building. I'm still interested to see what the final product is, but for a team that the Cavs seemingly can't beat this season, like they got more annoying, that's for sure. And ditto for the Knicks, but you had touched on this a little bit. And we talked about this more in the last episode, but like in March when the Cavs played New York for the last time, they played Boston again. It'll be an interesting litmus test to see like how do these new additions impact these teams, especially New York. And then like the Cavs who stood pat, like did it change much for them in the grand scheme of the Eastern Conference when so many teams around them made moves, whereas Cleveland just stood still and just kind of let everyone make moves around them.
Let me ask you this, just kind of bluntly about the Royce O'Neal Dean Wade thing. Which would you rather have?
No, Dean Wade. If it's Dean Wade and 2 to 3 second round picks, it's just
You'd
I
rather
don't
have
know.
Dean Wade.
I'd rather have
You'd
Dean
rather have
Wade.
Dean Wade.
Just yeah, I'd rather have Dean Wade. Like Royce O'Neal is older. He is making less 3 pointers on a higher volume than Wade. Maybe not as
Costs
sound
more.
defensively as he wants more.
Have
Yeah,
to
it
pay him
costs
after the
more.
season.
Yep. And also like the second round picks are like the few assets you have left if you're Cleveland if you want to make a trade. And do you really want to spend those on Royce O'Neal to make a midseason move? And also in the grand scheme of it all, like I would understand doing that if he felt like this is gonna make Donovan Mitchell happier, and if we like go get his one of his good friends from the Jazz, like it'll make him want to re up with us more. But that's a different
Seems
beast
pretty
in of
happy.
itself. Yeah, he
Seems
seems
pretty
pretty
happy
happy,
as is.
but
It, for whatever that's worth.
well, whatever it's worth. But yeah, I'd rather have Dean Wade. What about you?
Dean Wade, not even a question. If especially with the price, if it was like 1 second round pick And
I'd entertain it if it was a second, maybe two, depending on what second rounders Brooklyn wanted out of the deal, because the Cavs do have like
second rounders are fake money also. Like that
they
they're like
are.
the crypto of picks.
Counterpoint: Koby Altman said they have to utilize those second rounders a little bit better.
He's right, but like
because
just look
they,
how
they can't afford to sign free agents anymore. Like they have to develop the talent in house to round out the rotation.
yeah, the other part of that though is just like if you look at the Tankathon had a tweet up that was like all the second round picks for next year's draft, I think, and the amount of picks in that draft that are rerouted to other teams, it's like kind of crazy.
Fair enough.
Like
And
they're just
also,
like it's just
in the crypto sense, like you can just say this second round pick is worth X amount of dollars because I say it is, and a team can either agree to trade you cash for that, or
they're like
you
fake second
move
round
on.
picks with the protections on them. It's like a whole fugazi thing. All right, after this, let's get into some buyout guys. You mentioned Dinwiddie. We'll hit. I'm just gonna tell you now my take. You can get excited about names and to just be the buzzkill. I'm gonna tell you why there is not a single buyout guy that's actually gonna make a difference on this team this year. We'll get into that up next. Got to tell you first about our friends at Gametime. Gametime has last minute deals, amazing flash deals, zone deals. You can easy to find and buy every ticket for every kind and event in your area. They have all-in prices that show you your total up front, so you know you're getting a great deal before you check out. I actually have some friends who just bought tickets for Cavs Celtics because they wanted the Kelsey brothers bobblehead, and they'll be there, and they found a great deal because of Gametime. With zone deals, by the way, you pick the section and Gametime picks the seats for big time savings. There's also the Gametime guarantee, so you always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. So download the Gametime app and take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Create an account and use our code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem our code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Okay, so buyout guys. Dinwiddie wouldn't really do a lot for me, if I'm being honest. And Evan, I'm going to be honest. I don't think there's not a buyout guy that to me would really move the needle. There's a name I want to touch on that we'll throw up the comment on. I think because it's a former Cav that has been mentioned in the chat and he's available. And there's that's always like a fun thing you could do, but buyout guys really don't make that much of a difference. Like even if they just don't. Buyout guys are fun. It is good depth. I think like there are times where a veteran can come in and be an added presence for you, but historically buyout guys don't tilt your team. Your team kind of is what it is after you do or do not make trades at the deadline. Cleveland's team is what it is. There's not anyone I think they're going to sign who I would want to play more minutes than say Sam Merrill. And Sam Merrill's already struggling to get minutes. If there is a spot, I will say it is guard. If you could find a veteran guard that is a more traditional veteran guard to be a leader for you, I'm open to that. I don't really think that's Dinwiddie, who also seems to have like really rubbed things the wrong way in Brooklyn. And do you want to be the team that introduces that? I'm gonna say no.
So to your point, like buyout guys making a difference are so few and far between. Like you can really turn back the clock and say like Peja Stojakovic like in 2011 with the Mavericks or like Boris Diaw with the Spurs in 2012, but looking through the lens of the Cavs and how they are more or less locked in 1 through 10, if you're looking at bringing in like a buyout guy, it's either going to be a veteran that helps push your younger players or maybe just makes them better, or like general vibe check stuff. It just makes you more fun. Like maybe it's Robin Lopez or something like that. The Cavs bring him back on the cheap, but like the cheap isn't the vet min for the remainder of the season. But yeah, in the grand scheme of it all, like buyout guys don't make much of a difference unless, again, like the examples I gave is like Peja with the Mavs in 2011 or Diaw with the Spurs in 2012, or even like Ronny Turiaf in 2012 too. Like there are guys who can make a difference, or more recently, maybe if you want to make an argument for Kevin Love with the Heat too, sure, whatever. But
yeah, but that's like one out of how many? I mean, can you
name
like a single buyout guy that helped the Cavs with they helped the Cavs when they made 4 straight finals? You can't. There's not one.
Oh, yeah, like Dante
Perk
Jones
was there to like
Perk and
Dante
was
were there to be like
Perk
adults.
was there to lay out Jay Crowder after J.R. Smith whipped his wrist into Crowder's throat. So Um, Either way, like Koby Altman did say, like this team's goal, like the expectation isn't a championship or bust type season. They want to make the playoffs and like figure out what this team is and like maybe go further than the first round or at least a gentleman's sweep in the first round. And so if you want to get a vet, you want a guy who can push people, who can hit the pressure points, maybe like be that vocal leader when things seem their toughest. But you also just want to bring in a guy who isn't going to rock the boat, who gels with what you're building culturally and foundationally, and also just like kind of has a clear understanding. Like, yo, we're kind of locked in 1 through 10, maybe even 11 when this team is fully healthy. If you really want to get to the nitty gritty of it, like, don't come in here expecting to play. Like Kevin Love went from not playing for the Cavs to starting for the Miami Heat. Like that's the rare circumstance there. Like the Cavs aren't able to present that to a free agent right now, and I think that's just kind of the expectation you have when it comes into getting a guy on a buyout.
All right, so we'll end on this. B Scrolls in the chat said the Pistons waived Joe Harris. Um,
Yeah, they did this.
yeah, I wasn't gonna say it. I was gonna be. I'm trying to be like a full glass person, like a not a drain, but yeah, that was bothering me. Joe Harris is washed.
Yeah, yeah.
Like he's not good anymore.
I would say he's, I mean, better than you or I or anyone realistically listening
Okay.
to this show.
Okay.
But
Yeah, but
like
Evan,
he
Evan,
hasn't. He the Pistons are such an odd team where they are objectively terrible, like objectively bad, like record wise,
are you
losing streak
talking
and
yourself
everything.
into Joe Harris right now?
No,
Is
no,
that what
no.
you're
I'm
doing?
saying I'm. Let me finish my point. But they were trying their damnedest to be competitive, like every single game. Like the way Monty Williams is coaching that team is like he wants this team to be quote unquote competitive. He'd rather play veterans and then over the young players and develop them. If Joe Harris had any gas left in the tank, you can bet your bottom dollar Monty Williams would have been playing him like serious minutes in the rotation and probably would have had a better understanding of how gassed or washed he is. But like he was a vet that wasn't getting minutes in Detroit. That's like a not a huge red flag, but it's like a small one that's kind of like going up the pole slowly. Because I'm like, yeah, the way that Pistons team operates, like if Joe Harris is worth anything right now, basketball wise, he'd be playing for the Pistons, or maybe they wouldn't have been as quick to buy him out either.
Yeah, I think it's kind of done for him. I think it's really just kind of over.
Well,
If you look at some of the other names that could be out there, it's Davis Bertans, it's Seth Curry, it's Dinwiddie.
hey, that'd be a fun reunion. Seth Curry,
Curry.
baby.
Yeah, that I would. That's the one I don't like. I don't think he plays. It
No.
give me like Danny Green vibes. It's like, are we sure he should be playing? But it's fun. Um,
Well, counterpoint to that, I don't want the Dating Green vibes where everyone's just like, why isn't he playing? He could be making a difference for this team right now. And then he goes out there and plays, and I'm like, that's why he's not playing.
here's the actual one that I would be interested in because he's actually pretty decent for Philly this year. It's Daniel House. That guy. I don't think
Yeah.
he is a lock to play for you. And like, is he the shooter? Like he's a 6'7" wing and he's smart and he's a good team player. That's at least a guy I would want in my locker room. That's kind of the one. But I think he's gonna. It's already kind of been reported. There's a lot of names or a lot of contenders that are interested in him. So that would be that would be kind of interesting to me if that's the route that they go with him. That would be like the one I would be okay with if they're going to do anything and not just sign Craig Porter.
Yeah. I mean, Craig Porter makes sense. For me, I mentioned Robin Lopez just because he has familiarity with his coaching staff and a lot of the guys on this roster. So, like, it would be a pretty easy fit. Plus, like, he's comfortable with not playing. Maybe if you want a guy who maybe you can squeeze a little bit of juice out of, maybe it's Gallinari if the Pistons end up buying him out. But I think just because he has a little bit of gas left in the tank, at least what he showed with the Pistons when the Cavs recently played Detroit, like I think there's going to be teams that have more of a guaranteed path to him playing that are going to be lining up quicker for him. Other than that, like people mentioned Marcus Morris, that could be interesting. Jetty Osman's off the table because San Antonio may buy him out.
Corey Joseph is theoretically like a veteran guard
Yeah.
as well. He's gonna get bought out by Indiana, but
yeah, it's tricky because like when it comes to buyouts, either you are finding like a clear path to an open availability or spot on your rotation that gets you minutes there, like whether the juice is or and like most of these guys are looking for opportunities to play so they can guarantee their next paycheck. But like a guy who's at the tail end of his career, who's like, you know what, I'm here for the vibes, let's do it. Here, let me throw one last name at you because the expectation is Memphis will buy him out from what I've gathered. Would you be open to a Lamar Stevens reunion?
Yeah, from like a locker room perspective, but he shouldn't play for the Cavs at all. That's
No,
the thing.
he.
There's even Daniel House, who's like played on a good team this year. You're not going to play. Lamar would be fine.
Say
I,
I would pick Lamar over
vibes.
House just because like it's for the vibes and I don't know. Everyone liked him last year and he is now two teams removed from San Antonio, so like he is more than clear to re-sign to the Cavs after the big Z rule.
Yeah, I wouldn't hate that. Could do worse. I think it's at least another like front court body. You know, it's at
And
least like another like
it's
Dean Wade
it's your
gets hurt.
it's your 14th or 15th man. Like you don't need to be like overthinking this too much. Like it's for like a cultural slash like locker room vibes guy slash like it's game 82. We're resting our entire like 10-man rotation and playing these guys into the ground because this is their last or probably only chance they'll play for us this season.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna end there on this live stream. We'll be back later tonight, early Friday morning. Recap of Cavs Nets and all the fallout from that. So tune in for more Locked On Cavs. This has been our trade deadline reaction. Wanted to get it to you as soon as possible, leading to the game. Enjoy the game. We'll talk to you soon. Ruffian, you asked us a question: is JB in the lead for Coach of the Year?
I'd say so.
Well, let me tease, Evan. We will discuss it on the Friday show. How about that? We'll do a whole 5 minutes or so on it. That'll be a topic. We'll look at the betting odds from our friends at FanDuel and check that out. Until then, I'm Chris. That's Evan. Jake Stevens didn't produce this, but I love him dearly, and we'll talk to you soon.